what does it mean to be international scholar? What are particular opportunities and challenges that may pose for being an international student? So I think I'll let them introduce themselves a little bit. Then we'll start with academic education background. Then we'll talk about all those questions. And anyone? I'm sorry, Louise. Louise, if
Okay.
you could do the overview.
Sure. Okay, great. Thank you. I am Louise Baldwin. I'm the Associate Director of the International Center. And as you probably know, the International Center provides support services for international students and scholars, but specifically for international students interested in the job search and today's topic, the academic job search. We do have a number of programs and workshops that might be of interest to you. We also offer a more general job search workshop called U.S. Job Search Strategies for international students, although that is really more relevant to students who are not pursuing an academic career but are looking for another kind of career. All of those things, if you go to the International Center website, internationalcenter.umich.edu, look for events and then international student and scholar workshops, they are all posted there, and we will send out reminders by email. In addition, we have some information on employment authorization on our website, and to navigate to that, you go to the International Center website, immigration and visas, either F1 or J1 international students, and then employment options. So you can also review some of the different employment options, employment authorization options there as well. For J1 students, do we have any J1 students here? Couple, yeah. For the employment authorization that applies to you, academic training or AT, we do advising on a more individual basis because there are fewer J1 students, so we don't always do programs and workshops. But if after attending one of these workshops you have more questions about that, you can make an appointment with one of our advisors. So again, briefly, we're certainly trying to offer a number of workshops to help you understand the immigration issues as you go and pursue your academic job search. So thank you very much.
I can start. I grew up in Mexico City, and for accidental reasons, I ended up going to a French lycée in Mexico City. So my exposure, my second language is actually French, and I went through that process, which is very different from the Mexican system and the American system. Then I was an undergraduate at the University of Mexico, which is a huge, basically open university with a completely different system. And then I came to the States to get my PhD in mathematics already many, many years ago. So I've been exposed seriously to 3 different educational systems. And I completed my PhD at MIT, and I actually never consciously decided that I would stay in the United States. I applied for postdoctoral positions. I got one at Princeton. So I went there. I ended up staying 7 years there. And then little by little, I ended up here. I've been on the faculty at U of M since 1990.
Well, my experience is quite different. So Pavitra, Sundar, I grew up in India, but I was only there till 12th standard or 12th grade. So I came to the US to do my undergraduate work. And I went to a small, actually a medium-sized institution, Ithaca College, about 6,000 students. Then I ended up in grad school here at the University of Michigan. After that, I got a postdoc at Dartmouth College, so another small liberal arts institution, Ivy League, so very different than the school I'd gone to for undergrad in some ways. And then I made yet another pretty big shift to Kettering University, which is an hour away in Flint, and I have a tenure-track job. It's an engineering school, and I teach humanities courses there. So I've had a very varied experience within the US system, but almost all my experience has been within the US system.
Okay, so probably I have quite a different experience with 2 previous faculty. I grew up in China, and then I got all my education in China until my master's degree. And then I went to Europe, Belgium, to study for a PhD. So I got my PhD in 2000 from University of Leuven. And then I came to the US right after 9/11. I landed as a postdoc at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. I joined the University of Michigan in 2005. So I have been here for 8 years. And just there's quite some difference in terms of the education system in China, in Europe, and here. So we can talk about that later on.
That's right. Thank you. So we are all coming from different educational backgrounds, and I think it will be very interesting to learn what are the tenure or hiring process at different institutions and the tenure process, and especially when you start an academic job, what are the teaching practices different? For example, Kettering is a very small engineering school, and how different that might be from if you are teaching in a one university like Michigan.
So overall, I think when you consider a career in academia here in the United States, you have, I think you should be aware that there are 3 areas that departments usually think about when hiring. One is the research, of course, and presumably that's one of the big motivations for you to want to be in academia. So I don't have to say anything about that, I think. Another area is teaching, and the third area is service. And all 3 areas are considered here at the University of Michigan, and I think really almost everywhere. There are very, very few places that will only focus on research. There are very, very few places, at least in mathematics and pure sciences, where you will only do research. So you have to think of your research as a fraction of your job, maybe a third, or maybe a little bit more, but certainly you have to have a global view of the job and prepare yourself for that. So I'm graduate chair for the math department, and I cannot emphasize enough to our students the importance of teaching. And that means that you have to be a really good teacher. You have to work on your pedagogy, but you also have to be aware of who your students are. So the more you can learn about what it's like to be an undergraduate in the United States, or actually, to be completely honest, I didn't fully understand the educational system until I raised 2 children in Ann Arbor. And then you see that the public schools in the U.S. through the eyes of your children. Of course, that's not a prerequisite, but I'm saying it's really a different. It's likely to be a very different experience from the one in your home country. So, anyway, I strongly encourage you to think about your teaching credentials. And as to the service, that will come later in your career, and that means serving on committees, organizing course coordination could be also being a good citizen in the department. And to do that that's something that you can grow into as you progress from a postdoc to tenure track and faculty, and you start to experience the system from the faculty point of view. So it's not something that you must be ready for when you apply. However, I think that a strong application already shows signs of interest in being a good colleague, helping somehow. If you help organize a seminar or something like this, that could be something to include in your application to point out that you were a good citizen of the department as a grad student. So anyway, so just to summarize, I think it's important to think of these 3 different areas, not just the research.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree with everything you've said. And I think those 3 categories, it's important to keep in mind that those remain important categories throughout your career, not just at the time of hiring, right? So anytime you come up for an annual review, third-year review, tenure, whatever, right? Those are the three main categories that are always in play. And depending on the kind of institution you end up at, one might be more important than the others, right? So if you end up at a place that has a heavier teaching load, if you're teaching a 3-3 course load, for instance, 3 courses each term or 4 courses each term, then obviously that institution is likely to value teaching evals, teaching experience, the range of courses you can offer, that sort of thing more, right? And it's important to keep that in mind when you're applying for jobs. And when you go on the campus visit, right? So you do not want to end up on a campus visit at a teaching institution and only be talking about your fabulous cutting edge research, right? I mean, it might seem obvious, but I think there's just a lot of things that you learn along the way in the job application process and when you go to campus visits that I was trying to call up in making notes for today, right? So, the other thing I'd say about one of the things that struck me when I first arrived in this country was the level of informality in the academic system. So calling professors by their first names, just walking in and out of class because you had to go to the bathroom or whatever, or the emphasis placed on social life at college, completely unfamiliar to me. You know, I thought this was college, I'm here to study. I had to ask permission, I thought, you know, of my instructors for various things. So it took a while for me to get used to that level of informality. That said, I think it's always better to err on the side of formality in professional job interview kinds of situations, right? So I talk to people who are more familiar with the and have been more immersed in the US academic system to know what the norms are in terms of even your job letter, right? Comma usage in the US is very different than in other parts of the world, right? Do you begin your letter with dear sir or sir/madam, right? Or, so what is the tone of your letters? That sort of thing, I think it's really useful to get feedback from US peers on, and not just rely on what you've come to know as a very informal system.
So since I came from graduate from different universities, here I think the difference in the United States is, and most of these faculty open positions are open competition to everyone. So not like in China, sometimes you have to know people. In Belgium, you have graduate from the same department and doing a couple of postdocs and then in the same department as a faculty. But in the United States, it's not the case. So very rarely you can find a faculty position in the same department you graduate from. So that means you have to go find a job from somewhere else. So the good thing here is it's open competition, so you don't need to have really a collection or know someone in the department to help you to find a job. But if you graduate from University of Michigan or some other top universities, may give you the opportunity to have this on-site interview. But then when you go for the interview, that's really the time they evaluate you based on just mentioned on your research potential, your teaching capability, and also whether you could be a good citizen. So it means that you can interact with the faculty there pretty well. So in fact, there's no one really trained to be a faculty. So there's no one taught to be a faculty here. But since you know that what you're looking for, like research, teaching, and also service to be a good citizen, so when you during your graduate study or your postdoc training, probably now you should specifically try to build this capacity to be a faculty. So when you are invited for the interview, you can show your capacity, show your potential. So when I'm sitting on quite a few search committee, so the criteria we are looking at is not really, I mean, of course, if you are very excellent in the research, you have record, the publication record, but we also look at your potential. Okay, so that's what you achieved in the previous, during your graduate study, that's your past. So we're looking also what's your potential. So whether you can really to become an independent scholar in this institution, and you can bring something new to this department, so that. But when you looking for these faculty positions, you need to build these credentials so that they can see it, and also you will be able to show this capacity to the interview, to the committees, to the faculty in the department that you can do it. So you need to convince them that you are the best person for this job, you can do this, and you can bring actual resources to the department. That's very likely will increase your chance to be successful.
Good, good, thank you. I think we'll go on, then we'll open for questions. And it looks like I heard it's very important in whether it's a research, one university, whether it's a teaching institution, research, teaching, and service, always the three areas that you have to focus. And teaching is actually very important, actually, even in a research university. So for interview, you probably have to bring up both and emphasize you'll be a good teacher at least, and also show your research potential. That's a good point because that's where your future career will be based on. And Professor Sundar talked about how to address the letter, the application letter. So before you start, you have to send in the application letter, and you have to go campus interview. So I was wondering if the panelists would give you some suggestions or strategies, anything you should do or anything you shouldn't do for the application letters on campus interview. Any tips and strategies you can use?
Commas, fix commas. But writing norms in general, because even the structure of the job application letter is very specific, and it's something you have to learn, right? So you have your research paragraph, you have your teaching paragraph, but what exactly goes in the teaching paragraph if you don't have enough experience teaching, right? If you've been on fellowship throughout, how do you show the institution that you have, you may not have taught these courses, but you've designed these syllabi, right? Perhaps that's one way to couch it. If you have either served or organized a panel or a colloquium of some sort, if you've had the opportunity to be on a some kind of committee in your department where they have grad student representation, highlight that, right? So learning that structure of the essay, what goes into the essay, I think that's quite important. And frankly, I cast a very wide net when I was on the job market. I applied to all kinds of schools, R1 schools, you know, small teaching institutions, engineering schools, apparently. So, and I did it because I knew I had come to enjoy teaching, and I knew I wanted a career in academia. And also because I was running out of time on my F1 OPT and then my H1B when I was on my postdoc, and I knew I had to get a job that year. Otherwise, I had to look for options in India, and I didn't have very many connections there. So I cast a very wide net. And I think there is some truth to the fact that you grow into an institution, you learn the norms once you arrive there. So cast a wide net and see where you end up.
So one thing that was crossing my mind now was the importance of letters of recommendation. And so that is, of course, something that you have to request from people. If you have a chance to get an outside letter, if you are able to, through your research, to meet and interact with other people, as faculty or from other institutions. I know that it doesn't always happen, it may be difficult, but I always find it impressive when somebody, I see an application that has a letter, not just from the people who taught the student, the applicant, but somebody that is somehow outside. That to me is something that calls my attention. It means that already the person is spreading her wings and looking for interactions. And I completely agree that you should cast a wide net. There are many, many different kinds of institutions in the United States. And for example, I happen to have very good colleagues at Dartmouth, which is a small institution that, however, has a doctoral program, and they have they emphasize teaching, but they do wonderful research. And in fact, there are many small liberal arts colleges, even those that have a fairly substantial teaching load. I expect some research, and some of my graduate students, former graduate students, have gone to some of these places, and they seem very happy. Don't be obsessed with making it into a research one institution necessarily, because these jobs can be very, very satisfying. You can have a very satisfying career at a liberal arts college, or many other kinds of institutions. So really look around and be flexible to see what comes up.
So I think the application process is pretty tedious, so it takes a lot of time. Be patient. But when you prepare the applications, build a good CV, and you need to look for the job description, to very carefully read this job description, to look for what they are looking for, what kind of candidates they are looking for. So you try to build your CV and your application letter based on this job description, and also check more carefully your CV. So this is the first document the search committee can see it. So really format it very well. Okay, check the typo. All these details could affect your chance of success. So don't afraid to ask people to help you. So ask your mentor, ask your advisor, ask your friend, read your CV, read your letters, and to make sure that you have a perfect document, application materials for the search committee to look at. That's really the first impression they have of you, because they don't know you. Okay, they don't really know you. What they can evaluate is based on this application materials you submit to them. So make sure that you have perfect, as fair as possible, the application documents to present. So don't afraid to ask for help. I think you'll be surprised if you ask people to help you. A lot of people will really willing to help you, to check your CV, to check your letters. That's the first really very important part. The second thing is really automation, the communication skills. So that's a way how people know you. Okay, so if you come invited for campus to interview, even you did a very great research. Okay, your research publication, you have 10, 20 publications in very top-ranked journals. But when you come to the campus interview, you cannot really express and communicate with your colleagues. And you cannot, when you give a presentation, give a talk, and you cannot really describe it. That's probably will kill you. I mean, will kill your chance for success. So be prepared for that, and prepare your talks in front of your colleagues, ask your mentor to help you for the presentation, and make sure that you can. I mean, this is when you prepare for the application. This is very important that we have good impression from this faculty, from the search committee, that show you that you can to be a good teacher, and you can describe your research. I mean, for example, if you graduate from University of Michigan, I don't think you have these issues. Okay, most of the time you have already practiced many times for your defense, for your proposal, for your preliminary, for your defense. You may give talks in different places, but still, pay attention to that. So be prepared, practice your presentations, and which could very likely will increase your opportunity of your chance of success.
Great, thank you. I think that's a lot of very, very useful strategy and advice. So I just wondering, is there anything to add as to, like, if you go on campus interview, and we heard a little bit you add on the formal side of it. Is there anything to be aware for dress, handshake, and dining practices
anything advice? How should I behave when in the interview on campus and in the formal dining lunch conversation? So any advice on that? Or tips?
Maybe I can.
Yeah.
So I can give recommendation for male students. So for wear normal suits with ties will be sufficient. For the academic interviews, on-site interviews, kind of formal, okay, relatively formal, and be relaxed. Okay, you are experiencing like very long day from 1 day or 2. You are talking with many faculty, maybe have 30 meetings during the interview. So be relaxed, be yourself. Okay, that's really key. You cannot really pretend to be someone else. Maybe at the beginning you can do that, but at the end you find that you are exhausted and it's very difficult. So be yourself. Okay, so be relaxed and also. It's the job interview is very important for you. Okay, it's very important for you, but don't be nervous. Okay? If you're nervous, it will affect your performance. So be relaxed and try to make some jokes. Okay, during the interview when you think about your interview, the people when they come here, when you come from campus for the interview, so they are interviewing you, but you also interview the university or the faculty, your colleagues. Okay? You want to know that you want to work with them. So if you come to a department, you don't want to work with them, that's very likely you will not be happy whenever you find this job. Okay? So it's not only just they interview you, but they also you interview them. So they will try to be, most of the places, I think they try to be friendly, they try to be helpful. But so you want to show who you are, okay? And you want to know the faculty, the members at the university, at the certain institution, and also know the students there. So try to be yourself. Try to get more information, as much information as possible. That's I think no, it's very important. Campus interview, but try to be yourself.
Yeah, I wanted to add, I think absolutely right that it's very good you're also interviewing them. And I think that if you ask questions about the department, about the student population, if you ask questions about the institution that go beyond purely the research line, then you will be, first of all, you will be learning about the place, but also you will be showing interest and awareness that the job is more than just the research. So don't hesitate to ask about where do most of your students come from, and of course you will ask what they will tell you about teaching loaded, but with teaching practices, and are you teaching in large coordinated classes or large lectures, or just really ask about what is potentially going to be your everyday life in the department. And again, that will show to them that you're thinking of the whole package, and I think that would be to your advantage.
I guess a couple of things. One, having been at the University of Michigan for the last 5 years or so, I imagine you, like me, when I was a grad student here, have gotten used to certain aspects of this culture, certain resources that you have available here that you might not find. In fact, very likely you won't find at other institutions. So it is highly unlikely, I think, that you will find an international center at a small teaching institution. Dartmouth had it, but Dartmouth is Dartmouth, right? Or, for instance, staff that are specifically designated to do particular kinds of work, right? So be aware of the culture of the institution from the beginning, because you do your research beforehand, before you get to the campus visit, right? Ask questions, ask careful questions, because you do not want to come across as an R1 brat, right? Demanding things that are not available at an institution that just simply does not have the resources, right? So and this is not at all a put down, right? I don't mean to suggest that smaller institutions or liberal arts colleges are bad places.